Brandon, at this point, we were not feeling a thing. Like we were at the point where in ministry, unfortunately, we were burned out. We were at that point, and we we were showing up, just being faithful. But as far as
Yeah.
us go, we were really not in a good place. So
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sip&Awe, where God puts you on awesome. I'm your host, Brandon Windsor, and welcome to the show. I want to welcome a very special guest, and that is our first-time listeners. If this is your first time listening, thank you for listening to the show. I said listen like 3 times there. If you can, please go to our YouTube channel and like and subscribe and share so that we can keep growing the Sip&Awe family. But before we get into anything else, it is time for the Sippy. Are you guys ready? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Thank you, Lord, for the day that He has made for you and me. Uno, dos, tres. Sip&Awe. Today's guest is a very, very, very dear friend of mine. His name is Pastor Jhony Pixcar. He was our host and our connection to going to Guatemala on a missions trip my first year in Go Ministries. And so I'm so blessed that we have been able to stay connected these past almost 5 years now. And guys, these 2 episodes that we got to make together are simply powerful. We're going to be talking about today Pastor Jhony's testimony, and the next week we'll be talking about anxiety, what it is, and how to truly give it to the Lord. All right, enough about me. Let's get in there and meet my friend, Pastor Jhony. Good morning, Jhony. How are you?
doing well. Great
Again,
seeing you again.
it's so good to see you, man. Oh my goodness. Quick question. So the way you spell your name, how did that happen? Where did that come from? Jhony.
Because here in the Latin American cultures, the H doesn't have any sound. So for us, JH is just the way to spell it. It does not have any. It's just, if you see actually some baseball players, you'll see that whenever you see a Johnny, you'll see a Jhony, and I don't know really why.
It's cool. It's different. I don't know. I love it so much. Like it's awesome.
There you go.
Yeah, so tell the people who you are, where you live, and about your family. Give us a little
Sounds great.
insight on who you are. Yeah,
Yeah. So thanks again, Brandon, for having me
absolutely.
here.
Absolutely.
So my name is Jhony Pixcar. I'm now a missionary. I'm the director of Living Gateways here in Guatemala. It's a missionary organization. We're a not-for-profit charitable organization now here. We're in the States. We started this. Oh my goodness, now like about 5 years ago now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so God called us back to Guatemala. I am from Guatemala.
Mhm.
My wife is from the States. She basically grew up in Missouri, and so we lived 17 and a half years there in Columbia, Missouri, where I think I met you there. I can't remember, to be honest with you.
I don't remember. No, I think the first time I met you was in Guatemala.
Oh, okay, okay. So
When you came
then
with the
it was
team.
a different team. Anyway,
Yeah.
so that's where I'm from, Guatemala. And then so I have 3 kids. One is already 20, and she's not with us anymore. She has left home and she's in college now.
Yeah.
And I have a 17-year-old and a 10-year-old, and now 2 dogs. So yeah, I have Ruby and Bella now. So Bella is the newest pup
Nice. Do
at
you
home.
do you miss the States or do you love Guatemala?
That's a crazy question that you asked just now. It's
Uh-huh.
been hard for me. It has been very hard for me. After living for 17 and a half years in the States, I just kind of dove into the culture and everything. So my whole the way I do things and how I think things are more the way that I used to do things in the States. And of course, I was in a small town, so it was
Yeah.
in a town or anything like that. And so when we moved back, a lot of people thought, well, surely you're from Guatemala, you're gonna be in Guatemala with your own culture, and it has been very hard because
Wow. Yeah.
things here are as far as the culture goes, it's very. it's hard to say, but that was kind of like the heartbroken a little bit for us, because after how many years, I've been out, there's still a lot of things that we do here that sometimes just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What
It's
is
like,
what would you say is the biggest difference that you do now that you wouldn't necessarily do in the States, or vice versa, that you did in the States or you don't do in Guatemala?
uh, things that okay, so. Well, I live in the city too. So here in the city, it's pretty fast paced and a lot of traffic, a lot of stress in that sense.
Yeah.
Most people are on the edge most of the time.
Uh-huh.
And so it is hard sometimes just to drive around. That's probably my hardest thing right now. I
Yeah.
like getting used to the traffic here in Guatemala.
Yeah.
And staying cool
Yeah.
on all that. Um, what do I miss in the States? I do miss, again, I came from a small town, so like open areas where you can just go out and take a walk, the dogs. There's just even when I go out of Guatemala City, there's really not that many places like that here.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
Are
Yeah.
you do you
So
and
I
your
miss that. I do
do,
miss that. It's hard.
do you and your family plan on staying in Guatemala for the long term, or do you guys plan to move back to the States sometime soon?
No, no, no. The plan ever since we moved was to come here and live here in
Very
Guatemala.
cool. Man.
Yeah. I
Wow.
mean, it's one of those things, right? Like that's the call for us, for my wife and myself. But the kids, of course, they are not called, to be missionaries. So they
Yeah.
they 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 might stay, they might not stay. I mean, as far as I know right now, my kids are saying they're going back. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. As so kind of hit on that because I think as far as I know, you're the first missionary to be in the show. How do you know when you're called to be a missionary?
how do I know? Okay, so I have never actually pursued ministry in general. Like I grew up in Guatemala, and ministry was really not even in my radar. And so like
Yeah.
I just did pursue God in his heart. That's what I did, all
Yeah.
my life. Amy actually, on the other hand, she felt the call to be a missionary since she was 12 years old.
Cool.
And of course, like the I guess the title of being a missionary, right? Like it's weird for me because I'm back in Guatemala, which is my country, right?
Yeah.
So I actually felt like I was a missionary in the States for 17 and a half years because
Yeah.
I lived my country, and I ministered in the States for that many years also
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. So when you guys lived in the States, were you a pastor then, or did you just attend a church? Talk about that a little bit.
So, we did attend a church, but we have always been very involved in church. We feel like the local church is important, and whatever you do, it doesn't matter if you're in a what we call secular world,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know, or you're in church. But yeah, we always were in church. So we started to attend church, and then just God started to open doors for me.
Cool.
And I knew I was running away from really ministry. I just knew it. Like
Yeah.
ever since I started, I worked. I didn't know a whole lot of English, so I had to learn the language. So it was tough the
Yeah.
first year and a half being in the States. It was really hard.
Yeah. How'd you learn English? What, just by listening to people? Did you take lessons?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was in a school, and Amy was like, "Nah, this is enough. We'll just have to change, and from now on, it's gonna be just English." No nobody in my family spoke the language, so I was just almost like throw it into the pool and learn to swim.
Yeah.
It
Man.
was tough though. A whole year and a half probably. Being honest, I really hated it being in the
Yeah.
States. It's
Yeah.
definitely not our plan. That's for sure. That was not
Yeah,
our plan.
how's your English today? I mean, you sound great, but for example, my wife, she is fluent in Spanish and English, but
Mhm.
sometimes when she tries to describe something in English, she can't find the words. So then she'll just kind of use the Mexican meaning of the word she's trying to find. Do you kind of do that, or you're not really there
Every
anymore?
once in a while, I still do. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm finding out that I think I'm losing a little bit. Like I'm like in a mix, and actually sometimes Amy, we within the ministry we go out in the mountain in the village, and
Yeah.
so like I'm totally speaking English to them, and she's like, Han, you're speaking English to them.
You're like, what? What are
Yeah,
you saying right
I know.
now?
I totally like. I'm not even thinking about it. Like to me, it's more natural to speak in English than it is in Spanish. I
Yeah, yeah,
can,
yeah.
but I'm having a little harder time to speak Spanish sometimes, especially in the mornings. Yeah, it.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife is kind of in the same boat because she speaks English more, and so she kind of notices that her Spanish is a little bit more choppy now because she doesn't speak as much. She only
Right, right.
speaks in Spanish fluently when she's with her family, which leads me just to kind of sit there and watch because I have no idea what they're talking about.
I bet that's for you too. Like you have to like, what's going on?
Yeah. So they always encourage me to learn Spanish. I'm like, I will, and I haven't
Uh,
really learned much.
well,
Um,
come on now.
Yeah. But I remember my first year when we went to Guatemala, you and your
Mhm,
wife shared your guys' testimony, and it
mhm,
was powerful. And so I would love to kind of get into that today. You can get as detailed, you can be as vague as you want. And so this will probably bleed into the second episode, which is totally okay. But
mhm.
yeah, tell us your testimony, Johnny.
All right, so before we talked about this, I was also praying and thinking about, of course, what to share and
Yeah.
all that. But everything is like tied, like everything is linked. My whole life, like I can, what happened to me was in 2019, in February of 2019. I was actually just, I was not feeling well, and I just had like a cold or something like that. And I was leading worship also at the time at that church. And so um, I was just not feeling well. So I decided to call and say, hey, I probably won't be able to go. I'm just going to go see the doctor and just to get some meds.
Mhm.
So I went, got some meds, got back, and that was a Thursday night. And usually we had a service on Thursday nights as well, mid service. So it was at night. My wife had gone to a funeral, a family member. So she left and she was going to go back still to church. So I just didn't go to church that night. But then everything just like started to spin, or like I don't even know how else to express that or how to describe that. But the symptoms that I was having were like having a heart attack. Like I thought I was having a heart attack,
Wow.
and I freaked out completely.
Yeah.
So I tried to call my wife. I tried to call Amy and tell her that, I don't know what's going on. Something's wrong, and that's all I could say. And I did everything I could. Like I went to take a cold shower, and my heart just kept spinning. I mean, going really fast, and I didn't know really what was going on at the time. So I did well. I couldn't make sense anymore. So my wife actually called 911. So the ambulance actually showed up at my house, and they
Mhm.
hooked me up, and my in-laws got there, and they took me to the hospital as I was having with the thought he's having a heart attack right now, so we just have to keep him alive. And crazy because like even when I was laying there in the ambulance and I was conscious of what was going on, I was just like praying to God, Lord, just like let me live enough just to say goodbye to my kids. This is how bad it was. Like I
Wow.
was really not in a good place.
Man.
I, I felt really like I was dying. And so they took me to the hospital, rushed me in, ER and all that. They hooked me up and in the States. So they did all the labs and everything.
Yeah.
And they everything came back and they say you're fine. Like
Oh my gosh.
physically, like you could not be any healthier than I mean, you're fine, you're good.
Yeah.
And that was the first shock because within me, I was not feeling fine. I
Right.
felt horrible. I
Yeah, yeah,
felt
yeah.
bad. And that was just like the first. Again, I didn't know exactly what, well, I know now what it actually triggered, but but like I didn't know what was going on, and so they sent me back. They just gave me some sedatives and things like that, just to calm me down and things like that. So we went back home. I couldn't sleep. I was just having that again throughout the night, and so I couldn't
Man.
sleep.
Yeah.
Then uh, the next day, it happened to me again, right around noon. Everything just started to spin around. My heartbeat started to go fast. I started to sweat my hands, and I'm like, "What's going on?" Like again, And unfortunately, that day we had like the coldest day, a snowstorm. My wife is out, so nobody was
Oh
around
my
me to
goodness.
take me to the hospital. And thankfully, the pastors were there, so they took me to the hospital and everything. And this time, they looked at me and was like, then they figured out, okay, you're fine, but you're definitely having anxiety attacks right now. You're
Yeah.
having panic. And it was actually panic attacks. They didn't describe it like that, but that's exactly what was happening.
Yeah.
For those of you, that don't know exactly how that goes, it is a fear that comes to you that is irrational. It's totally irrational because nothing around you is bad. You are good, people around you are fine, there's no emergency, but this is an irrational fear that comes
Yeah.
like a huge wave, and you just lose control of yourself,
Yeah.
and panic starts to come in. It's this irrational fear that you have. So they took me to the hospital, same thing, same story. So then Amy is a nurse, a registered nurse. So she's like, okay, something is not right here. So we just have to go and start to find out what's really going on. So
Yeah.
hopefully she found a professional, but
Hey guys, I want to just stop real quick and say thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I want to challenge you with something. If you know someone in your life that you know that they would like this episode, stop what you're doing and send it their way so that we can keep growing the Sip&Awe family. All right, thank you for sharing, and let's get back to the episode.
here's the thing, right? Like I said, it starts out like this, but I'm 42 years at this point in my life. I'm 47 now.
You look great for 47.
So anyway, so 42, I was 42, and let me see. So yeah, so prior to all of this, and this is what it gets, I'm actually, but really, for us, the journey really, and for me, the journey started way back when I was a kid. And
Yeah.
this is when I'm gonna have to go back in my story.
Yeah.
So you tell me, whenever, if you have any questions, just let me know, because
Absolutely. Yeah.
okay, so hang on, I want the little sip of coffee too. So it goes.
Yeah. Are you drinking the Guatemala coffee that
Oh
you?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
so
for sure.
good. Oh my
I sure
gosh.
am.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous.
Yeah. So I didn't know how much or what do you have, but I was gonna send you actually some pictures. I have here. I found some pictures when I was a kid. So
Um,
so I grew up in a town called Chichicastenango, which is a very long name.
yeah.
But in Guatemala, for those of you that don't know, we had a 30-year, basically, they call it a conflict, civil conflict,
Yeah.
but it was basically war. It was a civil war that happened in our country. And I grew up during that period of time. In fact, I was still in college when the peace treaty was not signed until 1996, if I'm not wrong.
Wow.
So, and all that started started in the 60s, but then it really started to get going on the 70s and 80s. It was like really,
My
really
goodness.
bad.
Yeah.
I'm talking really, really bad. Like it's war. It's hard to comprehend, for those of you that have never been in something like that, it is hard to understand. And then of course, I'm a kid. So I grew up, hearing ambulances coming through. When all of this happened to me, all my memories became very real to me.
Hmm.
So I started to actually see what I saw when I was a kid,
Yeah.
and like, bodies and helicopters, ambulances, and things like that were like totally not okay for me
Wow.
at 42 years old. It was crazy to think about it, and how your body responds to all that as well, because there is some
Yeah.
parts of your body that that's what we do now, right? So I have a little more of insight on that. But really, I grew up during that time, and yeah, so I didn't know what was going on. And looking back, I my whole life I was dealing with anxiety. I just didn't know I was dealing with it.
Yeah.
I was just, you know, going through life thinking that that's just part of my life. In fact, I think, failed a whole year in high school because I had so many stomach problems, which
Wow.
is some of the triggers that happens with anxiety.
Yeah.
Doctors and specialists and things like that, and nothing. Um, and 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 just, just looking back, it was crazy because, I did accept Jesus when I was 7 years old.
Yeah.
I remember the day, when somebody actually did the invitation. It was really cool. I knew that I needed Jesus. So I stood up. I had no idea what was going on. I was actually crying, and I just went up and prayed for me. And I was, I grew up in church. My pastor, my mom and dad had always also been involved in church. So I didn't know that all that stuff was happening with me throughout my life. And then, we're coming back. So I met Amy in 2000, and the year 2000, here in Guatemala in a mission trip. So we met
Yeah.
here in Guatemala. And we got along, and praise the Lord, we got married, we got engaged, and we got married, and I moved to the States. And throughout our whole marriage life, we always had some troubles, but we
Yeah.
didn't really quite knew what was happening. Like, some of the things that I dealt with was anger. That for small things, I definitely just like there was no in between, right? Like, I would just explode.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, Brandon. Here I am, a Christian guy who is trying to walk his life, and
Yeah.
you're thinking, yeah, I mean, you hear these verses of, the joy of the Lord, and the fruit of the Spirit and things like that, and yet you are still dealing with those things, and you don't know exactly, like, where this came from and why this
Yeah.
happened to me. So we had this happening, and unfortunately, and this is a little hairy, I guess, a topic to talk about, because, and I think God showed us that as well, that, when you are in ministry, you really have to care of yourself. And I don't know how much can I emphasize that, because ministry, it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy. You're dealing with
Absolutely.
so many things in your life personally,
Yeah.
but you also are dealing with other people's lives as well. And if you're not careful, you can really hurt yourself at the end.
Mhm.
And it's very important for us to learn a part of our lives. So we just kind of kept going, as ministers now at this point at the
Yeah.
church. And I worked in the church for almost 14 and a half years. So I was involved. I was, doing all these things for Jesus, which we did. It was great. I'm not gonna say it was bad, but at the same
Yeah.
time, there's no balance. So Amy and I started to have this thing, and Amy is the one that I'm like the risk, what's it called? Like the planet risk. I don't know how to
The
like.
risk taker?
I'm not.
Oh,
I'm not.
you're not. Okay.
I'm not. I plan the risk. I gotta make sure that, okay, we're gonna make a decision. Let's figure this out first.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Amy's like, let's jump. She's
Let's just
like the
go.
cheater. She's
Yeah.
just like, let's jump. It's okay. It's gonna work out. That's her thing.
Yeah.
It's gonna work out, man. So, but then she started to deal herself with depression, and we didn't know that that was happening to her.
Mm.
I didn't know that, and of course, like, the way I grew up, and how we sometimes kind of like separate those things, and we really can't.
Yeah.
uh, because as humans, it's how God created us. we are whole. Like we
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
can't,
Yeah.
you can't just take this part and not this part, right? Like
Right.
you're everything. You're a whole being. So uh I started to notice that she was not happy anymore. And then you cope, so she started to watch Netflix like crazy. uh
Yeah.
I set up, but she was just trying to numb herself. That's really what was going on.
Yeah.
um and then so she actually talked to me and said, "Hey, hon, I really don't feel good, and I feel like I really need to seek professional help." And of course, I'm like, "What do you mean professional help?" So she's like, "Well, I want to see a counselor or a psychologist." Like, I mean, but I'm
Yeah.
your
Yeah. Yeah.
friend. Like, I should be your best friend. I should know
Right.
everything
Right.
about you, and all these things that are true.
Yeah.
But you do have this God given people that can walk along with you. Not
Yeah.
necessarily, sometimes a friend, a good friend is it's good to have. Anyway, so at first I was very hesitant about it, but it was so bad that she was like, "No, I'm just doing it." She did it,
Yeah.
and he's still kind of like, "Yeah, I don't know about this." Okay,
Right.
So, uh, so she started to go to a counselor, and thankfully, praise the Lord, she was a Christian counselor,
Yeah.
and she started to walk with her, and I actually started to see changes, and good changes in Amy's life.
Yeah.
And I was like, "What?" Like, I was totally like shocked, like, "Oh my goodness, like this actually works." So,
Right.
and at this time, I'm not even, I thought I was not dealing with anything, but I was. I mean, I was dealing myself with a lot of stuff, a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, a lot of things that I was dealing with myself at
Yeah.
that time in my life. So, so then she said, "Well, do you want to come with me?" And I was like, "Oh no, like I really don't need that." So
Yeah.
you go ahead, you're good. Like I'm
Yeah.
I'm good, me and the Holy Spirit and by myself, I can do this thing.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So but then eventually we both went, and that's really when we started to discover and voice, I think, that whisper that we heard actually like 2 years prior to my panic attack, my
Wow.
anxiety attack,
Yeah.
when God and it really started to uh and you got to understand, like, we were very involved at church now at this point, and we were doing a lot of things for ministry, and just really it's a whisper in our ear saying it's time to go back. And we're like, "You're kidding me!" Like,
Yeah.
we're freaking out now, because that's the call. Like, when God called you or called us really to do something in obedience, sometimes it's just a whisper, and something
Yeah.
that it's there and you're supposed to do. And so anyway, so, and really that happened in 2018, when we really first started to, like, "Man, I'm really feeling like this," but we were so scared because we didn't know how that was going to go and all that. So we decided to start to see this counselor, and then we started to discover more and more that this is really what God was saying,
Yeah.
that we were supposed to go back, and we both started to work really. And then that's the thing, like, at this point, me, I mean, I have now a 20-year-old, so we already had kids at this point, and
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
living in marriage. And again, it's not like it was horrible or anything like that at home, but there was something that was not quite right.
Yeah.
So yeah, in 2018, we heard this whisper in our ear, and we did freaked out, because one thing is to say, because we, ever since we met with Amy, we thought that we were gonna go back or come back here to Guatemala.
Yeah.
Like, we got married and going to the States, 6 months max, we're going back to Guatemala. That was our plan. That was
Yeah.
not God's plan at all. And so 17 and a half years after that, or if you would say 16, I guess, or something like that, God says it's time to go back. But at this point, like, I have kids now, and they are not small kids either. Our lives are different at this point, and so that was a lot harder to swallow.
Yeah.
So That, that's kind of where in 2018. And so and this is pretty cool though, because we forgot about it. We went to a conference, and there was a guy who gave a word of knowledge actually in that conference.
Cool.
Brandon, at this point, we were not feeling a thing. Like, we were at the point where in ministry, unfortunately, we were burned out. We were at that point, and we were showing up, just being faithful. But as far as
Yeah.
us go, we were really not in a good place. So
Yeah.
so we went to this conference, and nothing. This is actually the first time that happened to me like that. It was nothing like, oh, like this extraordinary thing.
Yeah.
This guy just said that, I have a word for this couple. So very, very in order, everything. So like, if whenever you're ready, to the guy who was organizing or was in charge and all that,
Mhm.
I would like to pray for them. That was 2018, in the summer of 2018.
Wow.
Nothing in this service, nothing really was happening.
Yeah.
Then that's when this guy prayed for us, and he just looked at us, like, I see you guys working like with couples, and and we're like, yeah, we really like that. That's yeah, you're doing good.
Yeah.
So, yes. So he said that, but then all of a sudden, like, he changed completely. He said, but I see you guys working in the mental health, in the area of mental health.
Wow.
Yes, that's his exact words, and I'm saying that because we recorded it. We actually recorded videos.
Cool.
We have
Yeah. Yeah.
video
Yeah.
of it, and so he said that, and we both look at each other, and I said, "Well, that word's not for me." I told Amy, like, that's for you, because you're the
Yeah.
nurse, and like, I had no idea. Like, what do you mean mental health? Like that.
Yeah.
As far as me goes, I mean, the guy totally missed it. Like, whoo, and I said, and Amy, the same thing. Like, how do you mean mental health? Like that hasn't, you just don't
For
hear that
sure.
those kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So so we recorded it. We left it there. We saved the video, and we forgot about it. Because we went back home, and again we were dealing with ourselves, and it was hard at this point. It was very hard for us. It was a hard time, as far as even as a family. It was a hard time, because we're still in ministry.
Yeah.
So we went, and we came back, and yet, in 2019, going back now in 2019, when this happened to me, it took me I think about 2 or 3 months for me to just be able to get out of the house, because it
Wow.
was so bad that I was just in a room, and I couldn't get out. I could only just play two songs, worship songs, and I could only listen to one pastor in Spanish, and nothing else. We couldn't have company at home. We couldn't. I mean, for somebody to even touch me,
Yeah.
it was not good, and this is why it's very important to really get some knowledge as far as this goes, because unfortunately, we sometimes we do things with wholehearted, right? Like, we
Oh
do
yeah.
things, and then we don't know, but like at that point, I couldn't even have anybody touch me. Like, that would
Wow.
just trigger me to have panic attacks and anxiety attacks again.
Yeah.
So I couldn't have that done. And friends, whenever friends come, I will be in my room, and they will just stay and doing things, around the house. Thank God for friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and they will just cook for us or clean or whatever, because I was completely not functioning at all. And that's the hard thing, Brandon. That a lot of people that deal with this kind of things, it really gets to the point that you can't even function. Like,
Wow.
you can't. And unfortunately, you can lose your job, you can lose your marriage if you don't have the right people around you, or people that
Yeah.
will, at least would know about it. It is hard, and it's tough not only on yourself, but also tough on your whole family.
Man.
It is hard. It is
Yeah.
hard. It's a hard place to be.
Yeah. Man. Well, this is a great place to stop because we only have 7 minutes on this Zoom
Okay,
call.
great, great. Sounds good.
Um, but thank you so much for being so vulnerable. Like, I know that your testimony is going to reach so many people on the show. And even with episode 2, I kind of want to hear the rest of it and talk about mental health and
Yeah, yeah.
just the things that the Lord has revealed to you about mental health and why it happens and what the word says about it and how we can be set free from it.
Yeah.
Because even me, I have struggled with I don't know how to phrase it. I've only had one panic attack in my entire life.
Mhm.
It happened in high school.
Okay.
And what's funny, no one ever told me what it was. I just kind of put um two to two together because like kind of what happened, you know? Like I remember I was in a really tough place in my life. My home life wasn't the healthiest. I did not believe in the Lord.
Mhm.
And so my uncle passed away. And
Uh-huh.
this might
Mhm.
sound so weird, but I was praying to him. I was like, are you proud of me? Are you upset because like you get to see what I'm doing behind closed doors? It's weird. Like I
Yeah.
didn't understand.
Yeah.
And for
Yeah.
some
Right.
reason,
Right.
my mind wanted an answer. And so then
Mhm.
he wasn't answering. And so I started crying, but then I wouldn't stop. Then my body started shaking. I was crying so hard I couldn't breathe. Like it was really intense.
Mhm.
And so that's the only time that's ever really happened to me in my own life. Um, but mental health is something that I am passionate about in the sense because I have dealt with some things in my own life when it comes to negative thinking or when certain
Mhm.
things happen in my life. I just shut down because my mind is so loud. So I would love to talk to you about that in the next episode.
That'd be
Um,
great.
but thank you so much, Pastor Johnny. I'm super blessed that you're here. And here's what we'll do. I'm going to end this call.